Hello and welcome to the Go for Ball podcast. I'm Big Italy 42 and he is Scott Mailwig at Sports 25 to Life. And as we do once a week here on Sundays, we're talking about hot hitters, cold hitters, trends, maybe making fun of Chase Utley just a little bit like we do and how bad he's been all season. So, yeah, a lot of things to talk about here. So we're going to go ahead and get started off with catcher. And as he has been throughout the season, Stephen Vogt's still there, up on the top, batting .337 on the season, now up to 9 home runs and 30 RBIs. I mean, the guy pretty much just against righties, of course, but he's destroying right-handed pitching. And, I mean, the guy's got a .458 WOBA. I mean, he's got a .337 ISO. It's not even close how much better Stephen Vogt has been than every other catcher this year.
Yeah, 201 WRC plus. I mean, he's been outstanding. Really hard to ask for much more from a catcher, especially. I mean, for the most part, catchers are getting days off anyway. It's smart that they're giving him those days off against lefties so he can just rake against righties every day. I mean, 15% strikeout rate, below some of these other guys that are below him. Up to a 13% walk rate now. Only one catcher above him, I believe, is Grandal. I mean, everything's going well for him. 30 RBI already on the season. Oakland doesn't have a lot of power outside of him, and it's showing because anytime there's people on base, I mean, they're staying on base for the most part because there's no one else in that lineup that really just drives a ton of runs in with their power. I mean, Ike Davis is having a decent season, but I mean, he's not a big power guy. He's an average hitter, and I mean, there's just always guys on base for him. And like we said, when he's not facing lefties, I mean, he's a stud against righties, and that's what he's facing every time he's up.
Yeah, I mean, you had Josh Reddick got hot there for about a week or so, and that's about it. But, I mean, yeah, like you said, outside of that, no one else really producing at the plate. So they're relying on him a lot, and he's definitely coming through. So, right below him, a guy who's quietly batting .318 on the season, Wilson Ramos, just 1 home run, 18 RBIs, and not a guy that walks much, doesn't have much power, but, you know, where he's cheap, I think he makes for a nice cash game play sometimes, but at the same time, you know, it's frustrating because you see him batting 7th, 8th, down in the order a lot over here, and which is kind of strange for a Nationals offense that really hasn't been producing that well.
Yeah, definitely.
Elsewhere, we've got Yasmani Grandal, like you mentioned, walking at a great 16.8% rate. Had a really huge game, of course, 8 RBI game with 2 homers a week or so ago, and batting over 300 now. Got a .403 WOBA, showing 193 ISO. He's really getting it done, and he's, you know, A.J. Ellis was the guy who got some time as a defensive catcher there for a little while, but Grandal now, I saw that he's up there. I believe he was leading the league in wins above replacement for frame rate with catchers, some stat like that, and, I mean, he's hitting the ball well, so really, I mean, this is a guy that's just kind of doing it all. Not quite the power of Stephen Vogt, but, I mean, doing a hell of a job in that really potent Dodgers lineup.
Yeah, definitely. Another guy that's starting to come around, Buster Posey, up to 289 on the season. Solid walk rate at 11.6%. His on-base percentage up around 370. 800 total OPS. I mean, he's in pretty good shape. His batting average on balls in play is a little low still. It's just 288. If that can get up to the league average around 300, 305, you think he'll be around a 300 hitter like he usually is. Power is going to come around a little bit too. Only 5 home runs so far, but got to think that gets turned on a little bit here. He's looked a little bit better over the last couple games also. He's the guy that I'm really expecting to be up towards the top of this list at some point this season, but I mean, it's going to be really hard to catch Vogt at this point. Russell Martin's been great too, but he's been a little bit better on batting average on balls in play than some of these other guys. Same thing with Derek Norris for the Padres. Derek Norris, 350 batting average on balls in play right now, has been kind of ballooning that 300 average. But that's going to happen when you strike out 16, 17% of the time, especially when you're not a big power hitter. With Norris only 3 home runs on the season, still a ton of strikeouts.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a little bit concerning there. And, you know, you've got some other guys on this list that, you know, you've got Mike Zunino down at the bottom, finally starting to hit for some power.
Yeah.
That's kind of his game. As usual, really high strikeout rate. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. But he's up to 5 homers now. So providing some value now at the bottom of the order for that Mariners offense that another team that's really been struggling at the plate.
Yeah, definitely. not too much else on this list that's really surprising. I mean, Brian McCann, you think his average will come around a little bit, only 241 right now. His power's been okay, especially doubles wise. He's got a decent 170 ISO right now. That's probably what that'll hover around for the season. I expect him to hit like 265, 270 by the end of the year, though, and he's a little bit below that right now. Yadier Molina is a guy that plays every day, mostly because of his defense. Hitting 277, not terrible. One of those guys he's going to be out there every day. He gives you, I mean, some decent upside on his price because he's never a high price guy because he doesn't have big games. But not a guy I'm going to be targeting very often in daily fantasy.
No, not at all. I mean, definitely not showing any power. If you're getting a cheap catcher, you at least want to get some power out of him, and he doesn't have any right now. So as we move over to first base, no surprise up top, still Adrian Gonzalez.
Yep.
344 ISO, 367 batting average, 9 homers, 32 RBIs, having a monster year. Right below him, Prince Fielder starting to get that ISO up each week as we talk about it. Still batting 348, ISO up to 145, 4 homers, 20 RBIs, and a Rangers lineup that also has struggled, but it's finally starting to get it going. Beltre's starting to get going.
Yep.
Fielder's been hitting all season, so should be, a lot more run opportunities for Fielder with some guys actually hitting behind him.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's looked great so far. Like you said, the ISO's finally coming around. He's got a couple home runs over the past week or so. I think he's got 2 home runs since we last talked about him, so he's looking good. A guy that's got plenty of home runs, Paul Goldschmidt, hitting 347 still with 9 home runs and 28 runs and RBI. I mean, his batting average on balls in play of 418 isn't going to stay that high. But if he can hit over 300 on the season with his power, I mean, he's going to have a fantastic year.
Yeah. I mean, he's the guy that nobody ever seems to talk about him with the big guys up at first base, but having a hell of a season. And Miguel Cabrera doing it all during the day, it seems. He has all of his extra base hits and all of his home runs during the day so far this season, which is really, really strange. But also 15.9% walk rate, of course. And, I mean, the guy's just incredible. He can hit anything, anywhere. And he's won all these guys are some of 7 first basemen that are batting 323 or above. So
yeah,
that's why we talk about first base every day. It's important. Don't pay down at first base. Don't punt first base. There's so many good options on any slate. And I mean, this isn't even including guys like Joey Votto, Lucas Duda, Jose Abreu, all those guys below here that are also great plays most nights.
Yeah, and I mean, a guy that's middle to bottom, Mark Teixeira, has 11 home runs and 28 RBI on the season, only hitting 239, but he has a 350 ISO.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some massive power that you can get down here. Chris Davis, another guy a lot like that, 246, has 8 home runs, a 263 ISO. Both those guys are really cheap day to day, really attainable. The guy you mentioned earlier, Lucas Duda is a guy that doesn't have a ton of power yet, but he's hitting 296 on the season. His ISO is 160 with only 3 home runs, which is pretty solid. Another guy in that kind of range right now, Jose Abreu for the White Sox, hitting 288, 212 ISO despite only having 6 home runs. You got to think his home runs come around at some point. He's obviously hitting the ball well. They're just not leaving the park yet. A lot of his RBI problems, he's only got 20, are from the fact that their leadoff hitter hasn't been hitting at all. I'm sure we'll get to him at the bottom of the outfield here.
Yeah.
A lot of it, they've been rotating the 2-hole quite a bit. They've been playing some National League games lately where they've had to leave either him or Adam Lind out of the lineup. Sorry, not Adam Lind. Adam LaRoche.
Yeah.
I get those two confused all the time. But yeah, he's been struggling a lot with the guys around him. I think Abreu's going to break out of it. He's simply too good of a player to only have 6 home runs at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's going to go one of those tears like he did at the beginning of last year. He'll be fine.
Yeah.
Edwin Encarnacion, another one of those guys, starting to go on one of those patented streaks. He's got, I think, 3 home runs the last 4 days. 8 homers, 22 RBI now. ISO north of 200 there. His batting average on balls in play is still just 245. He's batting 237. You know, he's not a guy that you expect to hit 300. If he hits around 260, 270, I mean, you're thrilled. Showing his power, that's all you're really looking for with him here. And an interesting guy down here that was a power hitter before, never one of the better in the game, but having a really terrible season is Michael Morse. Batting 221, 0.08 ISO, just 2 home runs. He scored 4 runs and has 9 RBIs on the season. He's gotten a couple days off. We've seen, I mean, there's something up with Michael Morse. Maybe he's not completely healthy. Maybe he just doesn't have it anymore, but At the beginning of the season, this was a guy I tried to target a couple times in tournaments because he did used to have that big-time upside in some other spots before. He had it in Seattle and San Francisco, but now he's just a completely worthless DFS player.
Yeah. On the other side of that coin, two guys that were two of the better power hitters in the league. Albert Pujols, only hitting .231 right now. My biggest concern with him is that he only has a 6.8% walk rate. He was the guy that used to see the ball really well every time up, see a ton of pitches. He just hasn't really been able to get it going. He's been battling some injuries. He's looked a little bit better of late, but has been really up and down, going 2 for 4, then 0 for 4 twice, then 2 for 4 with a double, and then 0 for 4 twice. So he's struggling a little bit, but a 157 ISO, not terrible. The other guy, Ryan Howard, has actually looked quite a bit better lately. He's been hitting a few home runs over the last week or two here, up to a 230 average with 7 home runs on the season. He's been hitting lower in the order, which makes it really tough to play him, especially as a value guy with only first base eligibility. But 7 home runs is pretty solid and just over 100 plate appearances. The power is obviously still there. His big problem is it makes no sense to play him against lefties anymore, and he just strikes out too much. He's striking out over 25% of the time, and it's really easy to attack him. But, I mean, at least he's making guys pay for mistakes right now.
Yeah, that's a great point. So, he's power only. He's the type of guy you target in your GPP and your single bullet. Hope that he goes yards, and that's just about it for him. All right, let's move on here to second base, where, as always, our two favorite players at second base still stuck up there at the top. Dee Gordon batting an insane 426 still on the season, 479 at batting average and balls in play. Seems ridiculously high end. It is, but a lot of that due to his speed. He's got 12 stolen bases, 20 runs scored, 12 RBI. He's not striking out much, which is huge for him because he had these struggles before in his career. 11.6%. I mean, he has turned into a hell of a player this year. And if he maintains anything kind of like this, I mean, he's just an obvious play every day at second base. He's so good.
Yeah, I mean, we keep expecting it to come down. Every week we talk about him, and every week he's still 470 batting average on balls in play, 415, 420 batting average overall. The fact, like you said, that he's only striking out 11.6% of the time is massive for him, especially with his batting average on balls in play right now. It's just, I mean, if he's putting the ball in play 90% of the time and getting on base almost 50% of the time, I mean, he's just going to have a massive season.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I don't know what else we can say about him. He's just having a hell of a year. Jose Altuve is a guy, as we know, does it all. 13 steals, 21 RBI. He's got a little bit of power, 4 home runs. His batting average on balls in play, 346, but he's batting 333. That's about what he batted last year. I believe he batted around 340. So this is pretty much what he does, and he's a great all-around player as well. Walks as much as he strikes out. Gotta love him. DJ LeMahieu's numbers here a little bit skewed, if you ask me. Got off to a really hot start. Really, really struggling recently. He's been getting a couple days off, so that's coming back. But a couple guys that are starting to really pick it up. On the power side, you're looking at Jason Kipnis. Starting to get it going. I mean, he's had a ton of multi-hit games over the past week or so. I think he's had some 3-hit games, a 4-hit game, a bunch of 2-hit games. And then Brandon Phillips, who isn't hitting for any power anymore. His ISO is no longer 0 like it was a couple weeks ago. But up to batting 311, missed a couple games here, back in the lineup this weekend. But, yeah, he's a guy that's also cheap. Is not a bad catch game play sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. You got to feel pretty good about that. Both these guys hitting pretty well over the last few games. Another guy who I know you don't like that's been hitting well over the last couple of games, Brandon Phillips, up to 311 on the season. I mean, he's got no power anymore, which is kind of odd because that's used to be his forte. He was a 240, 250 hitter that was hitting 25 home runs a year. Now he's hitting 300 this season, and he's only got 1 home run on the year. It just doesn't have any power. Same kind of problem going on with Ian Kinsler right now, really in the same situation. Both these guys hitting over 300, having really good success on balls in play, but outside of runs scored for Kinsler, neither of these guys is producing a really solid number in any category.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Kinsler doesn't even have a home run yet on the season, but that was never his big thing. But, I mean, he had a little bit of power when he was with Texas.
Yeah.
So, little bit that you don't like there. Devin Travis is a guy that was really, really hot for a while there. Started to cool off, but he's still priced at a decent level, especially DraftKings. Batting 274 now, 7 homers, 26 RBIs already on the season. So he's having a great year. And then you look directly below him, and you've got Robinson Cano whose numbers really just pale in comparison to Devin Travis. Not even close.
Yeah.
Devin Travis has been much better. They're priced pretty close to each other, and Cano more expensive than him a lot of times.
Cano's basically unplayable even at this discount right now. I mean, he's been doing nothing. 1 home run and 1 stolen base on the season. The Mariners lineup hasn't been very good. He's only got 11 RBI hitting the middle of that order. I mean, there's just not a lot to like there. I would need to see a string of games before I start playing him again.
Yeah, I mean, it's bad. He's not showing any power. I'm sure the Yankees fans are thrilled to see that. They don't miss him right now. But, yeah, I mean, I still think he's too talented for this, but I'm with you. And until he actually shows it over the course of some time, there's no way I'm paying $4K for him when I can just pay a couple $100 more for Altuve or Gordon every night. Down here at the bottom, your weekly Chase Utley updates. WRC plus 4. He is batting 118 now, 110 on batting average on balls in play. Somehow has 3 home runs and 15 RBI. But Chase Utley is just an absolute. I mean, he's a waste of space in that lineup right now.
It's pretty incredible that he hit 3 home runs pretty recently and has only gone up to 4 WRC plus. It's rough.
Yeah, I mean it's bad. I don't even know what to say anymore about him. He's just been so terrible this year. So move on. Chase Utley probably not going to get out of that bottom spot unless he's just no longer qualified here in a couple weeks. But they give him some time off. But he's a Philly favorite. Team's not that great. He's probably still going to be in that lineup forever.
Yeah,
they're going to give him the Derek Jeter treatment. I'm sure I'll get some hate mail for that comment. But either way, moving on here to shortstop, a guy that I've been liking to punt recently. He's hitting the ball really well. Had 3 hits off Matt Harvey as well. Freddie Galvis batting .353. Not a power guy at all, but he's putting the ball in play, only striking out 10% of the time, walking almost 7. He does have 1 home run. He's stolen a couple bases. This is a guy, now that he's batting second most of the time, I mean, he makes for a great punt play at shortstop against most pitchers. I'm not saying I would play him against Matt Harvey, but, average pitchers, Freddie Galvis is a nice cash game play.
Yeah, definitely. He's been rock solid. As long as he's hitting at the top of the lineup, I feel good about him. And you got to think he's going to stay up at the top of the lineup with how much Utley and Howard are struggling. Even though they've shown some power lately, they're more 5, 6, 7 hitters at this point in their career at best. And another guy up at the top here, Zach Cozart, who I like when he's hitting at the top of the lineup, especially against a lefty. 5 home runs on the season already, 3 stolen bases. Striking out a decent amount, but not too bad. Pretty high batting average on balls in play, but that's to be expected when the guy's hitting .321. So, feel pretty good about him. There's a lot of shortstops up here that are having nice batting average seasons, but not really providing a ton of other stuff. Alcides Escobar for the Royals, having a nice batting average season, hitting .318, but 1 home run, 2 stolen bases, not providing a ton else. Adini Hechavarria, is that how you say it?
I don't know. I thought it was Hechavarria, but I was just guessing that. So we'll say somewhere in between, probably. The combination.
Yeah. I mean, he's having a really similar season to Escobar for the Marlins. He's hitting a little bit lower in the order most of the time, though. 2 home runs, 1 stolen base. Having a lot of batted ball success at .373. Most of these guys like this, you're not really going to want to target in DFS because they're really up and down guys that, I mean, even on their best days, they're probably giving you 1 hit and 1 peripheral stat, like a runner, an RBI, something like that. The guys you want to target at shortstop are the guys priced a little bit above them. They're having good seasons. Marcus Seaman, 307 average, really solid. 6 home runs, 6 stolen bases. Not going to wow you in either one of those categories, but compared to the guys we were mentioning before, he's got more home runs and more stolen bases than every guy we've mentioned so far at shortstop. It's just a really weak position this year with Tulowitzki struggling.
Yeah, and speaking of Tulowitzki, 2 home runs, 11 RBIs, 1.7% walk rate, .360 batting average on balls in play, but he's batting .289. So,
yeah,
speaking of unplayable, there's no way you can play Troy Tulowitzki right now unless you're stacking, hoping for that breakout game, but it doesn't seem like it's coming anytime soon for Troy Tulowitzki.
Yeah,
maybe it's mental. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I keep hoping they're going to go to Coors for a while and he's going to get hot, and I'm still kind of hoping for that. They've been kind of back and forth all the time lately. Lots of rainouts when they've been in Coors, which has been, I think, a big part of the problem. If they can get 6-9 games in a row in Coors and he can get hot, I think he'll end up having a fine season. Maybe the trade rumors are weighing on him a little bit, something like that. But like you said, he's just really not playable right now. I mean, you're getting better numbers from like Peralta and Semien.
Yeah, and Andrelton Simmons.
Yeah. Him and Starlin Castro both having pretty solid seasons. Both of them have 3 home runs, both hitting 271. Simmons is actually pretty low batting average on balls in play wise, only at 275. So you got to think his batting average comes up a little bit at some point, especially with the amount he's putting the ball in play. Only 6.9% strikeout rate, 6.2% walk rate. He's a pretty solid play most of the time right now, especially when he's hitting higher up in the order.
Yeah, and he's got Freddie Freeman batting behind him, so you got to love that protection there. And I guess we'll talk about another, I guess ex-Philly now. I always think of Jimmy Rollins as a Philadelphia Philly now, but he's a guy that we talk about all the time, only because he's cheap, not because he's any good right now. And he's batting 175, 196 BABIP. He's got a little bit of power, I guess, 127, but 3 home runs, he's stolen 3 bases. I mean, it's so painful to see how good this offense has been and him in the middle of it just doing nothing. And I mean, worst among qualified shortstops. That tells you everything you need to know right there.
Right. I mean, he's been really rough, and he's been priced so well and is in such a good lineup that it's really tough to not play him a lot. And I keep doing it. Yep. 3 home runs, 3 stolen bases is okay compared to a lot of what else is out there at shortstop. But the fact that he's only scored 17 runs consistently hitting at the top of that Dodgers lineup is really frustrating. But that's what's going to happen when you're only hitting 175.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's the interesting thing that I noticed here looking at the third base. The highest ISO of any third baseman on this season, outside of Todd Frazier, who's at 336, it belongs to Matt Carpenter at 289. Which that right there tells you Carpenter was already a pretty good all-around player. He hasn't stolen a base this year, which you don't like. He's batting 322, 6 home runs, 23 RBIs, 26 runs scored. I mean, we talk about him all the time as a great cash game play. He's got the upside as a tournament play now, the way that he's been swinging the bat, showing some power. Back from that concerning couple days off he had where he said he couldn't sleep, but he seems like he's fine. He had a home run the other day. I think Matt Carpenter's just going to be all right.
Yeah, definitely. Another guy really high up here on third base, Yunel Escobar for the Nationals. It's been a great value play. Not a guy that gives you a ton of power, only 2 home runs and a .072 ISO. But he's been getting on base a ton, scoring a decent amount of runs at 18 for his price. Not a guy that you really get excited about playing, but he's been a really solid value play most of the season. Mike Moustakas still really high up in the Royals order, hitting 315. Only 4 home runs. You'd like to see a little bit more power out of him, but the fact that he's hitting second in the order gives him so much more value.
Yeah, absolutely. And that whole order, like we said a million times, they're all hitting the ball well. Josh Donaldson starting to really get it going after the early season struggles. 8 homers, 27 runs, 24 RBI. Should be no surprise to you there in that big time lineup for Toronto. Looking further down the list, Chris Bryant finally got his first home run. Then he got his second home run. Then he got his third home run. He's really starting to get it going. He's the guy that is walking a ton at 17.2%. Still striking out a lot, but getting that number back down. So he's definitely a guy you can target moving forward. I think you just need to get that first one out of the way. Stop thinking about it. All the pressure on him, I'm sure, from everyone talking about it.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll start being more aggressive. I mean, I think he's leading the league in pitches per plate appearance seen right now, which is outrageous for a guy that young, which I'm going to take as a good sign right now. Obviously, we don't want him taking called strike threes as often as he has so far, but he's also, like you said, walking a ton. I think he's leading third baseman in walk rate. He's pretty high up there on the overall leaders in terms of walk rate too. So it seems like he's seeing the ball fairly well. I think he's going to get even more adjusted and have a really strong finish to the season at some point here. Another guy that's having a pretty nice year that's gone a little bit under the radar is Manny Machado because he hasn't been hitting as many home runs as people were hoping for. But if he's hitting 284, I'll take 6 home runs and 5 stolen bases from him any day.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's a lot more than I expected from him as far as that. I mean, he's a guy that I expected for a lot of his prime to hit 250 with 25, 30 home runs. If he's going to hit 280 with 20 home runs, I'd much rather have that.
Yeah, and I mean, he's been moved around the lineup a lot now. Seems like he's kind of settled in near the top, first or second most nights. So you got to like that. Gets lots of opportunities at the plate, some great hitters behind him. So he's in a great spot. Looking down at the bottom here, Luis Valbuena is a guy who has a ton of power. Love targeting him in tournaments, but just a 195 batting average of balls to play, 202 overall. But he's got 8 home runs and a 234 ISO, which is definitely what you're looking for here.
Yep, definitely.
Let's go ahead and move on here to the outfield. where of course there's a ton of big options, a ton of guys who are hot, and I guess we'll start with Bryce Harper because Bryce Harper has been absolutely ridiculous recently. He's up to batting .303 on the season, .347 of batting average of balls in play. He's walking 21.2% of the time, a .361 ISO, 12 homers, 31 RBIs. I mean, I don't know what this man can't do, but he is absolutely terrifying at the plate right now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just absolutely scary. I mean, that ISO is crazy.
Yeah,
and I mean, surprisingly, there's a couple of other guys that are really high up in ISO also. One of them is Jock Peterson, who has been probably the most interesting surprise this season. Been having a really fantastic year, 10 home runs already, 24 runs scored, has stolen 2 bases already. And I mean, with him, he's a guy that, much like Chris Bryant, is seeing a ton of pitches right now. He's in the top 5 of that same category, 20% walk rate, 31.2% strikeout rate. Just a massive, massive season so far, despite striking out a lot.
Yeah, and a guy that seems to be flying under the radar still, Matt Holliday, hitting the ball really well. .336 average, a .420 batting average of balls in play, certainly going to come down, but walking 17.5% of the time, you got to like that. Really, I guess I'll say a potent offense there for the Cardinals. They're not hitting for a ton of power, but they're getting the job done and scoring a lot of runs, so you got to like that. And a little bit below him, Michael Brantley is a guy that just always seems to go underappreciated, but 4.2% strikeout rate on the season. He's got a 198 ISO. He's batting .330 on .320 on balls in play. Michael Brantley is just that superstar that nobody talks about.
Yeah, definitely. Having a massive year. 2 guys that have been more platoon players over their careers, Angel Pagan and Josh Reddick, are both really hot on the young season. Both these guys hitting over .330. Pagan's been really frustrating to play in daily fantasy, though, because it's basically single or nothing.
Yep.
Only a 4.2% walk rate, only 10 runs scored, only 9 RBI, despite having 142 plate appearances at the top of that Giants order. The Giants just haven't really been able to get anything going offensively. Josh Reddick, on the other hand, has been really helpful for some of these other A's because their lineup's been pretty good especially against righties with all these lefties in it. They've looked great lately. He's got up to 25 RBI. He's been red hot over the last couple weeks. Has a really solid strikeout to walk ratio, 11.5% walk rate, 9.8% strikeout rate. I think he's going to have a pretty nice season here.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And mentioning a guy here who finally just moved up into the top of the order, he was batting down around 7th or 8th, is Jake Marisnick, batting .288. Excuse me. He's got 9 stolen bases, 3 homers, 15 runs, 13 RBIs, and most of that coming from batting 8th, 9th, or 7th. So, you know, he's an interesting guy his price is starting to creep up there, but 173 ISO, batting at the top of that Astros order, that's starting to get it going here. I think he's a really interesting play that nobody ever seems to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, really, really strong play. As far as other outfielders go, Hanley Ramirez having a really strong season, 284 batting average, 10 home runs. I'd love to see him get a couple more stolen bases in there, but you know his stolen bases are going to keep fading as his career goes on. Now that he's in the outfield, love him as a shortstop play on DraftKings whenever he's healthy. He's been struggling with that shoulder injury a little bit lately, but absolutely fantastic shortstop play with how much Tulo's been struggling. A couple other guys having nice seasons. Will Myers, 291 batting average, 5 home runs, 3 stolen bases, 28 runs scored. He's really been the catalyst for that Padres new offense. He's looked really good. I'm surprised to see how well he's fitting in the leadoff spot there with all those other big bats in the lineup. If Matt Kemp can get it going again, I think their offense is pretty good despite having to play in Petco all the time.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Mentioned a couple guys here down at the bottom. George Springer is a guy that I love. Struggled with injuries now a couple times this season, but he's got 10 steals, 14 RBIs, 5 homers, batting just 190. You got to be encouraged by his walk rate, 15.7%, but he's still striking out a lot. Same goes for Jay Bruce behind him. Similar numbers, minus the steals. He's only got 3 steals, but batting 162. So these are 2 guys that are tournament plays, upside guys. But you got to think that especially George Springer is going to turn around. Maybe Jay Bruce doesn't. We've seen him struggle before, but I think George Springer will end up being fine this year.
Definitely. A couple other guys struggling. Andrew McCutcheon still only hitting 230. he just doesn't look right. He's looked a little bit better lately. I'm hoping he gets it turned around. Another guy, Adam Eaton, that we talked about earlier on the podcast, he's been better lately. Finally broke the 200 threshold as far as batting average goes, hitting first for the White Sox. He's up to 227 now, but his batting average on balls and plays well above that at 275, so hopefully he keeps it going. Not a power guy, only 2 RBI so far on the season. Tells you how bad the bottom of that White Sox order has been. There's been no one on base. And that's been really tough for that whole team. I mean, their whole team's been struggling for the most part, outside of Abreu from time to time and LaRoche from time to time. Jason Worth, another guy. Really, you can only play him against lefties right now. He's been a little bit better against lefties, but a 21% overall strikeout rate, just a 200 batting average. Only 2 home runs, both coming against lefties. I mean, he's a guy you completely ignore against righties right now, no matter how bad they are.
Yeah, and you like to think he's got that protection with Bryce Harper behind him, but like you said, he's just not hitting righties at all.
No.
So it's rough. All right, with that's going to wrap things up. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe, and we have a lot of great content, as always, at dailyfantasycafe.com, and we'll see you on Monday.